Experimental digital artists. Today we're going to talk about how you can do some basic drawing and painting in Photoshop. A lot of my class will use Photoshop as a foundation for creating digital art, but we always are looking for different ways to make art. But it's really important we understand the software that we're going to use pretty often. So today we are going to focus on how we can do some basic line drawing, and then how we can shade them, how we can bring them a bit to life. And then eventually, as digital artists, you're gonna learn how to do a lot more, but let's jump right into it on Photoshop. All you guys need today is Photoshop and any computer that can run it. You guys can download Photoshop by going to adobe.com. There's a free trial available, but if you really like it, you guys can subscribe to it and get it for $10 a month. So the first thing we need to do is create a blank canvas to work on. I do that by clicking right here on Create New. Now, a lot of the settings can be confusing at first, so let's talk about what they mean. We'll keep it pretty simple. So most likely you're just going to be posting your work online and you don't need a super high resolution. Also, for the sake of simplicity, I just recommend working in a square, but you can work in a rectangle if you want. Just so you know, the maximum resolution for social media is 2048 pixels wide. So what I go ahead and do is 2048 by 2048 and a resolution of 72. Everything else you can pretty much leave the same unless you've changed this in the past. I'm going to leave the background as white because we want a white background. So once we hit create, we're going to open up our main area of Photoshop, and we again have the canvas we just made. You only need to know three main things today. You have your canvas, you have your layer panel, and you have your tools to the left. What we're doing today is basic line drawing. And the very first step I recommend for pretty much any project in Photoshop is to create a blank layer. We do that by going to the bottom right of the screen, and next to the trash bin there's another plus sign, and this could vary depending on the version of Photoshop you're on if you already had it installed and you had an old version. But I click on that and I get a blank layer. What you guys are going to see right away is that when you create a blank layer, you have a checkered pattern. White means white, not blank. Checkered means blank. And the reason we do this is because we are going to work in what's called a non-destructive workflow. What that means is we are always able to go back without destroying the work we've created already. So think of it as a bunch of filters we're going to add, and each filter is a new layer of your image. And you guys will see why that can come in handy much later on, but for now it's important just to keep that in mind. So, basic line drawing. What we're going to do is something incredibly simple that anyone can do, even if you're not a good artist, even if you don't think you have the hand coordination to be a good artist. You don't need to be one to create beautiful artwork in Photoshop. So the first tool we're going to use to create our line drawing will be the brush. So I can go over to my left and see all these tools. And the quick way to find your tool is often by using what's called a hotkey. A hotkey is basically a keyboard shortcut. The keyboard shortcut is B for brush, and I will repeat over and over until you guys eventually through repetition will start to get it. So I hit B for brush. Now any tool I select will have options up top, from brush type to the actual properties of the brush. If I click here on the circle, for example, I can change the size of the brush. So let's see what that looks like. Here's the tiniest brush. Can't even see it. I'll click here. Do a large brush. Sorry. Do a large brush here. Now the reason it's not working, and that's okay, I made a mistake, and this is one you guys will find often, is because I'm painting white on white. So what I need to do to change my color is click here on one of the on the top box. I can actually hit D to default it, and it made it go back to black and white. So again, let's click here. Here's a very large brush. It was too large that it actually filled the screen, so I'm going to hit actually the Command Z, and on PC Control Z, and that is to undo. So back to brush by hitting B, clicking on the size, and let's just We can change it and look by dragging the cursor onto our canvas. We can see how large that is. So here's a large brush. Here is a very small brush. And then we have another option, which is hardness, which we probably won't want to use today, but it will come in handy in a later lesson. But the hardness is about how hard the edge of the brush actually is. Or in other words, does it have any gradation? So if I lower it all the way to the left, and I'm going to just try to match size more or less, you guys can see what happens is we have a softer edge to the brush. Now, here's the good thing about creating a new layer. We can erase anything on this layer and limit it to this layer. Right now, everything's on this layer. It's not a big deal. But what we can do, if we don't like what we did, we can just hit delete while that layer is selected, and then we can just make a new one. Okay, with all that said, now we can begin our basic line drawing. For your very first assignment, I always recommend you do something simple that has a lot of hard lines. So what has hard lines? It could be a city. It could be anything like that. I like to draw robots. So today we're going to work on drawing a robot. So with my brush, it can be really hard with the mouse to draw a straight line. So what we're going to do instead is hit Command Z. And what I can do is every time I click the brush once, if I hold Shift on the keyboard, actually, I'm going to Command Z that, go right here, click once, hold Shift, click here, and I have a straight line. You guys can see how that works. Now, I'm going to click here, straight line, click, click, now I can let go of Shift. I'm doing this very quickly, but you guys can of course come up with much more creative robots. So one thing I like to do sometimes is I can also mix it up with freestyle drawing. If I want to do that, obviously I wouldn't hold Shift. I could just draw things in, like if he has rocket feet, for example. I can draw that in by not holding Shift. Let's go to the mouth. I like doing kind of angry robots. And maybe his eyes will just be big circles. Now here I'm going to show you guys a really cool shortcut. If you ever want to change your brush size, you don't need to click up here. You can, and then manually drag it. On your keyboard, you have a bracket key. And that bracket key, if you don't know, it's that one that kind of looks like a straight line with two lines kind of pointing in or out. There's two different bracket keys. So what I can do, bracket right is larger if I keep tapping it, and bracket left is smaller. So let's say we're not going to get into coloring and shading today, but I'm going to just give you a little peek at how you can change your colors. We can go from click on the black square and pick a color. I'm going to go with like a green, and I'll then pick what shade of green I actually want. I'm going to go with the neon and just do a large enough brush where I can just simply click. And that's it. That's how you basically do line drawings in Photoshop. It's very simple. All we needed was that one tool, and of course our layer panel, making new layers. And we'll talk about why those layers become really important in the next video. Before we proceed, what we're going to do is save our work by clicking File, Save As, or if you want to do the hotkey on the keyboard, you hit Command S, and that will bring up your save. You're going to have two options. One, you can save it into the cloud, which we won't get into today. We're just going to save onto the computer. And when that comes up, we're going to have a few options to click. We can name our work. I'm going to name it Fun Robot. If you save it as a PSD, that's good if you want to continue working on it, because it will keep all the layers intact. But if you are done with it, you can change that to a JPEG by clicking Format and going to JPEG. I'm not going to do that because in the next lesson we will work on shading the robot and bringing it to life. Now I can click where, I'll go desktop, and I can hit save. And then this will always come up. Just go ahead and hit OK. And that's it. That is how you do basic line drawings in Photoshop. If you guys enjoyed this assignment and you want to keep working on your robot or your city or whatever it is you drew today, the next video we'll talk about how you can shade your work or add color to it. All right, guys. See you in the next video.